Folks. Today I wanted to show you some ideas on how to end a song. And I'm not just going to, to show you 5 or 6 standard endings and have you try to memorize them. What I want to do is try to paint the picture of what's actually happening typically at the end of a bluegrass song. You can kind of figure out what the chords are, and then you figure out how you can create your own endings. Maybe take some basic Scruggs licks that you play normally, like G licks, and turn them into endings. So that's what I want to do. To start with, I'm going to stop here and go grab my guitar and kind of show you what's happening on the guitar and bass, kind of what they're doing on the end of the song. So I'll be right back. Praise the Lord, I saw the light. So if banjo is your first instrument and you haven't played with a lot of people, you may not know exactly what usually happens at the end of a bluegrass song. And I'm kind of sticking to a vocal number. Most of the time there's one measure there that you've got to land the plane to end the song. And normally I'm just playing out of the key of G right now, but it'll keep going with the G, and then it'll do a quick D or 5 chord and then go back to the G. So this is a G if you're not familiar with guitar chords there, and then when I go to this, that's a D or your 5 chord, and then it'll end back on the G. Praise the Lord, I saw the light. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So it's got the hint of that 5 chord in it. So that's what most of your typical endings on the banjo, they may be in G, but on your ending lick, right before the last note, it'll have a note that'll be in the D chord somewhere, okay, or in the D scale. And you'll see that when I switch back to the banjo. And if someone's playing the bass, and I don't have my bass with me, it's at church, but it kind of does the same thing. Praise the Lord, I saw the light. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. So to help you kind of understand what's usually happening at the end of the song, I wanted to kind of pull the guitar out there so you can see what the whole band's doing, what's the structure there. So let me go back and switch back to the banjo there and kind of show you some ideas on how you might can end the song. Praise the Lord, I saw the light. All right, so we're back on the banjo and talking about endings. And there are so many different variations on these endings. And one of the reasons is because of what I was telling you earlier. You got to have a hint of that 5 chord, which if you're playing out of the key of G, the 5 chord is the D. So, you've got, think about what's the very final note is. Most of the time you're ending on the 3rd string open, which is your G. And often you are kind of pinching the 1st and 3rd string open at the same time, which is a D and a G. But think about the note right before that. Here's where the options start to come into play. You can go, okay, which is this note. And think about your D chord, okay? So that's actually one of the notes in your D chord. Okay, or you could, that's another note in your D scale. Or you can kind of pull that off and then have an open 4th string, which is a D note itself, which works, okay? Even the shave and the haircut stuff. Okay, that note right there is inflects your D chord, and it's in the D scale. Same one there. Okay, so I want you to be thinking about that and understanding how all this fits together, and then you can start being creative and coming up with some of your own endings. okay? One other thing I want to mention before I start kind of showing you more variations and hopefully opening doors to you there, to your creativity and your imagination. One thing that I have trouble on and still do sometimes is when to start that ending lick, okay? If you think of the ending as being a lick there. Some of the endings that you do last the entire measure, which means you want to start on the first beat, okay? However, there's a whole lot of them, depending on how you fit it all together, that it doesn't start on beat one. You've got beat one is a rest, okay? Often you do that because it's the last note that someone is singing if you're doing a vocal number, and you don't want to start some big fancy lick on the same note. So you kind of pause and then you start, okay? And one of the times you see that is with the big rake across the strings. That's kind of a big indication that you're going to end it, and that's a typical way to do it. I think I did that earlier. Let me show you two different times you can rake it. So if we do the I'll Fly Away again. Praise the Lord, I saw the light. So on that one, light was the first, when I sung the word light, that was the first note. The first note in the measure, and then you start right after that. Or praise the Lord, I saw the light. So in that case, you're starting the ending after you pause on the first beat of the measure, okay? So it's kind of hard to figure that out because on some endings you don't do that. You actually need to start on the first beat of the measure, and sometimes that means you're on top of the vocals, or sometimes it's kind of an extended type of ending, a double ending, something like that. Let me show you an example there. Praise the Lord, I saw the light. So that time I started the rake on the word light. Praise the Lord, I saw the light. Which is different than praise the Lord, I saw the light. Okay, so that's one of the things that definitely tripped me up when I started trying to put all this stuff together is you know, you got to land the plane everybody at the same time. So you got to figure out what ending lick you're doing and what beat it starts on. Does it start on beat one, or is beat one a rest? Okay, so that's really important to try to get that worked out. All right, so now I want to try to give you, hopefully give you some G licks, just typical licks that you normally do in Scruggs playing, and you can turn them into endings. So instead of memorizing, you know, a set of, all right, I'm going to memorize these 4 licks, 4 endings, and use them all the time, it can get kind of boring. So hopefully this will open the door up to your imagination here, putting that together, what I was showing you on the guitar about how it has to, how the chord structure works when you end the song. All right, so let's take your typical tag G lick, which hopefully everybody knows. So this is one where if you're in a jam session or you're playing along with your backing track and all of a sudden the ending sneaks up on you and you're in the middle of doing that tag lick and you got to figure out how to end the song. Okay, so here's what you can do. That's your typical G. There's no D part to that. Okay, so what you can do is you can put that a note from the D scale in it. Let me show you. And that ends up being a measure. Okay, and it's got the D part in it, the hint of the 5 chord, if you will. Now, all kinds of things you can do there, but you know, when in doubt, I kind of go back to that or one of those two. Usually, is a little more typical way to end the song. Okay, so that's just changing your basic standard G tag lick, and then adding in the piece that you need to finish out the ending. Okay, let's try another one. I think I did a video and I called this the second most important G lick. That's the Okay, so how can I convert that into an ending? Praise the Lord, I saw the light. So I'm going to kind of work this out on the fly here. That'll work. Praise the Lord, I saw the light. Something like that. How about this one? That's a typical Scruggs lick that you use. Praise the Lord, I saw the light. Yeah. So you can turn that lick into an ending. Praise the Lord, I saw the light. Let's try to think what else. How about this one? Praise the Lord, I saw the light. So hopefully you're starting to see how you can put the little short G licks and then add in the part that goes, okay, that's got the hint of the D note in it. Okay, I was trying to think if there were any more I had planned. Oh, you can use this one. Praise the Lord, I saw the light. Now, why does that work? That note right there before the last note is part of the D chord. Okay, so that works. Or you could go back and put in the typical thing I was doing earlier. Okay, so lots and lots of options, and hopefully I'm kind of opening the door up to your imagination and let you improvise and create your own licks. I don't want to put too much here on more here on this one video, but what do you do if you're in a different position? Well, if you're playing out a C, well, what is the 5 chord there? Is your would be your G. So yeah, if I can, I don't know if I can even sing that. Praise the Lord, I saw the light. So how would that work? That would work, something like that. So you got to do something that would right before the very last note that has something from the G scale in it. You could put it back with. Okay, so hopefully that's gives you a little bit of food for thought there on how to create your endings, how endings work, and give you enough there to start playing around with it.